is our very first Leader Unplugged. Puja, you have been a mentor for me personally and for our community at Product Leader Academy. Thank you very much to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Puja, part of Leader Unplugged is getting deep into what decisions got you to where you are today. You're a very successful product leader, having worked at several organizations. So really just take us through your story from the beginning to hear what were some of those key moments.
Thank you. I mean, my story has always been about turning toward complexity. Founded in a startup at a very early stage in my career. It was a recruiting startup that grew to 2 million plus in revenue with about 170,000 plus candidates. It was a niche site focused on smart grade careers. Growing that and exiting it taught me that for any product to be strong, it's really the business model behind it. From that point on, there were many learning moments for me as I scaled into other enterprise roles. ADP, where Oscar, you and I both worked, had the opportunity to manage a multi-billion-dollar benefits portfolio. That touched so many people at scale. What we learned there is that every decision had a revenue or compliance impact, a cost implication. Now at Deluxe, as part of the product team in merchant services, spanning into the payment space, there's a common thread. It's all about execution, which earns credibility. When you take something ambiguous, a business problem, regulatory requirement, or a complex integration, and turn that into a product for merchants that actually rely on it, that's when people start trusting you with bigger responsibilities. That's really what I learned. I would say the biggest lesson for me, and hopefully many of us can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to deliver, right? To actually ship something. Puja, in today's world, things are moving so quickly with AI and vibe coding. Has that execution-oriented viewpoint changed over the years? Has it been originally more of an analytical view and more about doing the research before delivery, and now it's shifting? Or has that always been the mainstream way that you gain credibility and authority?
Good question. In my experience, technology has one common pattern. It's always evolving. As a result, product management is always evolving. One constant is a product manager's ability to own an outcome, regardless of the technology driving it, be it AI or vibe coding. Applying that AI is just a hype. We have to fully embrace and reckon with. Ultimately, from a product lens, it's about owning the outcome. If you go back to my own career, it was about making sure that different stakeholders and technology teams were aligned. Ultimately, owning the outcome, meaning delivering measurable revenue growth while keeping clients and regulators happy. In the payment space today, I'm facing similar challenges. Yes, there is AI, but that's something that can accelerate many facets of product management. We're facing the same challenges, balancing business expectations and the merchant experience while generating revenue. It's really just about making sure this is a primary focus and staying outcome specific, in my opinion.
That's a great point, Puja. I'm thinking about our community balance with senior individual contributor, product managers, those first starting out in their career. When you're mentioning tying it to revenue and growth and how to have that quantitative impact, sometimes it's hazy, especially early in your career with internal tools that are not as market facing. What advice would you give to those roles not directly tied to sales revenue targets?
It's a good question. In that instance, don't wait for permission. Look for outcomes you can fully own and drive and tie them into measurable results. It could be a combination of qualitative and quantitative feedback that you monitor. I'm not just talking about basic metrics like adoption or NPS, but more about the business implications, the revenue impact. Also, keep an eye on your competition, the way the industry is moving, and how AI is impacting different facets of the business and maybe supporting. What are the areas that you can tie together to come up with hypothesis that you could then monitor and quantify is what I would suggest. One other thing I would add is it still boils down to execution. What proof matters more than paper and payments. Merchants, for example, don't really care about industry accolades that counts for credibility, but what they care about is how quickly we can process more securely. How can we get funded faster? How can we save on costs? The products we're building at Deluxe Merchant Services center around that. Execution is the real credential. Staying focused on how that execution maps into revenue or some sort of a metric you can measure is what it boils down to.
It's a great highlight, especially with experimentation. So just to summarize and make sure that I'm capturing what you're saying, Puja, if you don't have a clear target, let's say you're a sales product manager, you would be tied to a revenue target with your sales stakeholders. But if you're tucked away in the business, create metrics around your performance so you can show that you are moving that needle, even if you have to define the needle sometimes. Did I capture that right?
Yeah, exactly. And don't wait for permission. Be experimental, right? You'll be surprised what kind of experiment will result in a thought with other peers or things that may interest other stakeholders that can then result in a real initiative that you can drive.
From your experience, what has been root causes to people not getting that promotion up to senior or into a lead role or even breaking into the management route, despite their track record of delivering, hitting targets? Have you seen a headwind for that type of growth?
Yeah, many in the industry have described this, but I think it boils down to being stuck in the build trap where you're not just a product manager that is outcome focused, capitalizing on all the facets that product management offers. You're stuck in backlog management, tactical, super execution focused role. Execution is ultimately what matters because you want to show proof that you understand what it takes to ship and push products forward. But it's also about making sure you're not stuck in the feature factory, right? I think it really is about breaking through that where you can be execution focused, but ultimately you need to tie and connect the dots beyond just shipping the initiative or the product and make sure you can quantify the impact of whatever you build. Say I launch a feature or a new capability, right? What does that even mean? Did adoption hit 60% higher in that quarter? Did support calls drop by 30%? It really is about finishing that story as opposed to just shipping the product out. If you do that on a repeatable basis, those efforts are sure to be recognized. I'm definitely a proof point of that experience where you're not just building or executing, but you're also tying that into actual measurable, noticeable results.
Yeah, Puja. I'm going to highlight one word you mentioned, noticeable. I read something online the other day. I'm like, wow, this is right on point. I sure have been victim to this mindset of, oh, I'm not in marketing or I'm not in sales. The notice component of our work is as important as the actual delivery. If we don't control the narrative, someone else will.
You have to create a story, right? I think really good product managers are also really great storytellers. So you've got to own that narrative, to your point.
Absolutely. Going back to that comment you mentioned about vibe coding, I get excited about it. Just last week, you showed us this cool project you're working on with your husband about the coffee hub. I think all of us collectively have this itch scratched. We now are vibe coding our way to some level of visuals. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Hopefully it does more often than not. Inside a corporate environment and with these new tools available to so many people, what's your take on it? How this capability balances with the concerns of engineering, tech debt, or potentially security?
Extremely important to prioritize and reckon with the security risks from using some of these newer tools, making a huge splash in the consumer market and the enterprise space. There's a lot of room for that sort of assurance. So what can we do in the meantime is really keep a pulse on these different tools, which are so powerful. I know you and I were geeking out about Replit, Lovable. There's no shortage of these tools, and they are such great tools. In fact, Figma also has Figma Make that I love using it. But with enterprise data, especially in the domain that a company such as mine is in, we just cannot afford to take any risks. But at the same time, we want to make sure we keep innovation forward. So it is a tough balance. What I've personally done in my free time is try to keep up with how these consumer-facing tools are evolving and figure out what that pathway would look like for enterprise adoption. It's not clear to me. I don't think there's any one clear contender out there. There's no shortage of stories where things have gone awry. I think I saw something about Replit where somebody lost their entire data set, got wiped out because of one wrong prompt. I do not encourage anyone to take those types of risks, especially with enterprise data. but don't stop experimenting on your own accord. At Deluxe, we have a very strong ecosystem to support us as employees. We have an AI playground that assures us of security. We are still experimenting with it. It's not widely available, but it's something we're continuing to monitor and extend upon. I'm not stopping my at-home experimentation. You and I are going to continue to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I wonder if I'm in my own echo chamber because I'm messing around with all these tools. Sometimes I even switch tools in the middle of the week just to find out what I'm missing out on. What's it like in the enterprise? Adoption curve as accelerated as in the consumer market, or is it still lagging a little bit adopting AI tools?
Pretty much all of my colleagues, regardless of whether they're in a technology-facing role or a business-facing role, are using AI on a daily basis. We have Microsoft Copilot, which is incredibly useful. Our CTO office has done an amazing job of evangelizing responsible use of AI across the organization. There have been a lot of internal employee workshops to help everyone understand the pros and pitfalls of AI and use it wisely. I think that has been great. I know that there's a lot of buzz online, and I'd like to think that the enterprise space is figuring out the best way to adopt and incorporate some of these technologies in products we're working on.
I'm curious, your all the buzz. The AI product manager role, do you feel that AI will be in every single role? What kind of camp do you sit in?
I definitely think AI has already permeated pretty much every role in some way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly. With respect to AI product management, it's such an interesting field because with AI, there's so much happening, and we've got to all have a foundational knowledge. The great AI product manager will understand to what extent I can leverage, but more importantly, how to identify the different use cases and how success can be measured. And how can this be scaled in a real product-led way? My belief is that things are changing so quickly that anybody that doesn't dedicate a certain portion of their week continuous improvement or learning in this space is missing a huge opportunity to be that AI product manager down the road.
It's something I've observed with Product Leader Academy. I think it's because we have ease of access to such innovative tools that can bring about a UI and functional design with just one prompt. I've observed that there's this kind of malaise to basic research or product market fit instead of taking more time and thinking through the problem. Do you see that as well in enterprise, or are we just jumping into the solution, alluding to the build trap you mentioned earlier? Or is enterprise taking its time to really kick the tires, even though they might be easier?
Yeah, the good news about these AI tools is that there's no cost to running deep research on a hypothesis you want to learn more about. And does a pretty good job of pulling all the facts together. I think that is just the starting point. The avenues available to us in pulling all that data and discovery in have compounded with AI and all the tools available. It's been quite a luxury to be able to do that sort of research. But again, it shouldn't be done in a silo. There's still benefit to validating some of those findings with real customers, be it through a customer advisory board or with your own customer segment that you're talking to on a day-to-day basis, applying the good old-fashioned ways of user research or being really married to design-led principles. All of that still very much benefits a lot of these enterprise initiatives and should be enforced. There's also times when we've had to accelerate initiatives and have had very little proof points to validate that. We've been able to do that relatively quickly to be able to say, okay, is this something that's going to scale, or is this something that's sunk cost and we should just move on to something else? So it depends. And I don't think that's ever going to change because that's what's involved when you ship products.
Absolutely, Puja. Puja, I'm going to shift gears back to the career coaching for a moment. Given that we've been speaking about AI for quite a bit now, some things still hold true, especially early career folks. They scratch their head and say, is this really what I do for the rest of my life? Is this how product management is? And it might be a byproduct of their environment, or it could be just a wake-up call of this is how it is. What advice would you give to a person within 8 years of graduation in product management? When is the right time to know that this might be not the right environment for me?
I like to go back to what I said earlier, which is if you're in the product space already, you have a tremendous impact on an organization. the empowerment to pick an initiative or a small feature, any improvement that can deliver business value. Stop asking or waiting for permission. Pick one metric or one feature that can drive a strong value exchange, and then build on it and build a coalition, find people within the organization that are willing to listen and encourage you. Hopefully you have the partnership from your engineering teams and leadership to run a 2-week sprint or small experiment to move the needle. Exercise those product management muscles beyond just building by ensuring you package whatever you build with a clear problem, solution, and result. Own your story. That's how you're going to earn influence within the organization. Don't feel like you're stuck. Small proof points are what is needed. In my experience, that's what's helped me to build that momentum for bigger investments. It may be within the same company, or it could be a leap that you take in a totally different industry like I did many times. It's really about making sure you remind yourself that you may not have all the answers, but you have the will to move business forward and to make an impact.
It's a great point, Puja, and I'll highlight that you do not need to have the title of product manager to move the needle and push the organization forward and tell that story. A question on that. As you look at candidates who are trying to articulate that story on a resume, how do you prefer to read that story? How is it they break through the noise to get your attention?
We are hiring at Deluxe. We're growing our product management team. One of the things I look for is candidates to go beyond just launching a product. I would love to hear them say, hey, I launched X and it hit adoption, increased adoption by 10% in the next quarter and decreased support tickets by X amount. Someone who has that ability to connect the dots from the problem they're trying to solve, not just execute, but also tie that execution to the business value delivered for the organization. That shows the candidate can break the stall and recognize the impact they have on the business and the value they create.
Excellent, Puja. I'm sure our community, especially those looking to change and break into the product roles, will take advantage of that advice. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Puja, we covered a great amount of detail here. Thank you for sharing your story of how you have accomplished so much in your career, advice of putting your delivery cap on and learning by doing, walking us through AI and how that's changing inside of the enterprise and affecting the candidates you're looking at right now. Thank you, Puja, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Feel free to join our community. Our curriculum is built on proof and execution over theory and paper. If you're interested in learning by building and the portfolio that gets you hired, join Product Leader Academy and chat with folks like myself, Puja, and many others. Thank you for joining.